That's an issue that's near and dear to my heart. I serve as a first lieutenant in the New York Guard. We are a volunteer force that augments the New York National Guard, which are the kids that go get sent overseas. I see these kids. One of the functions we do in the New York Guard, I'm an attorney. I work in Manhattan, and we do wills, we do free legal work for soldiers and their families. And when these kids go overseas, and the young men and women in the professional soldier class go overseas, we do everything from a will to a healthcare proxy to other things. To even when it comes to disposing of these soldiers' remains, it's a very sober thing to sit in front of a young man who's 18 years old going overseas, and he's talking to you about, well, if I don't come back, my kid brother likes my car, so I want to make sure he gets that. It really gets to you after a while. The first couple of times I did the legal support operations, or we call LSOs, you talk to these kids, you talk to people who have, fathers who have wives, they have children that they're worried about taking care of when we do the wills and the different things for the healthcare proxies. The reality is they might not come back, or they might not come back intact as they left. The first couple of times I did our LSOs, I went somewhere privately and I cried. And honestly, I wept because it's a very emotional thing. I love these kids. I love these soldiers. I am very much honored and in awe of them. What I do in the New York Guard is a volunteer capacity. We are first responders. We do emergency management and response work, supplementing the New York National Guard. If we got attacked along the lines of 9/11, I would go in and be a first responder. But I'm in awe of these people, these young men and women, these soldiers that go overseas and fight for us, that risk their lives for our freedom. I take this very seriously. And I initially looked at Iraq, and I supported the war in Iraq. I thought, well, if Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction, it's something we have to go in and stop. It later became a war of liberation. Well, a lot of places in the world we can liberate. It ended up being something that I think most Americans said, why were we there? Afghanistan was always the epicenter for this, the Tora Bora region on the mountainous area between Pakistan and Afghanistan. That was really the crux of what was going on. That was where Al-Qaeda was. That was where bin Laden was after 9/11. We sort of neglected that for several years and went into Iraq instead. That allowed the Taliban to reconstitute itself in those years. What we have in Afghanistan now, and thank God we're getting out of Iraq, we're pulling out gradually. I believe we have to set a timetable. Anything you do, you have to have a timetable. Whether you build a house, you build your foundation at this point, you build the structure at this point, everything has to have a plan. One of the problems in Iraq was we had an entry strategy, but we had no strategy to manage. We had no exit strategy. That's what got us bogged down there. You have to have definite goals and parameters within which you operate. And with Afghanistan, I don't want to be there for 20 years. I don't want to be there for 50 years. I look at Afghanistan and I'm a pragmatist. I love these people serving in the military. They're my band of brothers. I stand by them. And one of the things you do when you stand by somebody is look at what they're being subjected to. What is the goal in Afghanistan? All right, you got Hamid Karzai. He's the president of Afghanistan. He's probably the biggest buffoon in the world stage right now. His brother is one of the biggest opium dealers in Afghanistan. We're propping up a government that's really invalid in many ways. What are we doing there? What are we going to accomplish? Afghanistan is called the graveyard of empires for a good reason. From the times of Alexander the Great to the Soviets in the 80s, you don't win war in Afghanistan. The way it's structured, it's a tribal organization, it's a tribal society. You have different tribes that exist in Afghanistan. They've been there for 10,000 years. They're going to be there another 10,000 years, whether we're there or not. We have to take a different approach. Putting more boots on the ground, keeping kids there is not going to help us. And these kids are also under constraints too, the way they can respond, the way they're equipped. They're oftentimes very ill-equipped. We don't give them what they need really to respond effectively. They're under orders that limit their effectiveness to respond to certain conditions. They're not in an advantageous position. I want the kids to come home. I want to have a stable government in Afghanistan if it was possible, but what we have to do is take a different approach. What we did in Anbar, the Anbar awakening in the Sunni province, in the province in Iraq, that was something where we worked with the local chieftains, we worked with the local leaders, and got them on our side. That's how Afghanistan is structured. If you get the chieftains and the different tribes on your side, the Pashtun tribal leaders, you can actually do more good than putting boots on the ground. You don't want to become an occupying force. You want to become a force that's going to be there to work with the people. And I think putting more boots on the ground is not what we have to do right now. We have to get out of Afghanistan. And I say that as somebody who serves in the New York Guard. I wear the uniform. But if you care about these kids, what I will tell you is don't put them in a situation that's impossible. Don't put them somewhere where they're subject to being killed, to being maimed. It's not fair to them. What is our goal? Most people can't even tell you what our goal is in Afghanistan. And when you don't have a goal in a war, you get a lot of kids killed for no reason. And we have to take a different approach to Afghanistan. We have to look at it as it is. We have to be pragmatic. We have to do what we did in Anbar and the Anbar Awakening, which was the key turning point in Iraq. Work within the culture, work within the system, but don't put more boots on the ground. It's not going to help. It's going to get a lot of kids killed. So I want to have a timetable. I want to have us get out of there. I also want to take that money we're putting into the war in Iraq and Afghanistan and put it back into America. You know, the billions of dollars we spend over there, that could be invested in creating jobs here in the United States and helping these kids when they come back, getting them jobs. So it's blood and treasure that's being squandered at many levels. And I do believe in a timetable. I believe in having objectives, meeting those objectives, and having timetables, because without that, you end up there for 20 years. And there's no way in hell I want us to be there for 20 years and have these kids exposed to that.